Good afternoon. You're listening to WVBN, the world's choice for weekly news. A somber week for many this week, as multiple nations suffered losses or setbacks in the Morgana War. First, though, we turn to the League of Nations, where a resolution was passed prohibiting vessels under international flag from transporting Morgana contraband to unapproved ports. Furthermore, officers were expressly forbidden from developing Morgana technology for the exclusive use of their home nation. Enforcement of this decree was left vague. The Allies chose to support Finland in its upcoming war through the use of land supply routes through Norway and Sweden if they could strike a deal with both nations. On the other end of Europe, they offered Italy a trade deal, British coal for Italian weapons, in an effort to encourage the nation to distance itself from Germany. The Italian government promised to consider the offer. Finally, the missing Polish submarine Orzel reached the Scottish coast, where her sailors were warmly greeted after several weeks of uncontacted peril after they escaped internment. From the Axis, Germany countered the Allies' offer to Italy by promising German coal in exchange for abandoning their attempt at a Balkan neutrality pact, which Italy promised to consider as well. From the Comintern, the Soviet Union presented the casus belli of their invasion of Finland to the League of Nations. Finland was unquestionably using Morgana technology, and as this technology was uncontrolled by the League, it presented a grave threat to the Soviets. This would therefore justify an invasion to ensure Finland did not cause severe harm to their neighbor. Weeks of fighting left Italy exhausted and low on supplies, yet a Morgana presence near the Gulf of Aden and the Seychelles still demanded attention. The sloop Eritrea investigated reports of Morgana attack near Port Victoria in eastern Africa, yet found the port undamaged. While returning to Italy, her crew spotted a large Morgana fleet traveling northwest, and made haste to report and escape the fleet. She encountered the French vessel Bougainville, and warned her to flee as well, but the French sloop was too slow to keep pace. The Italian battle fleet was forced to rest and recuperate at Naples, leaving the Tyrrhenian and Aegean seas undefended. This opportunity allowed a fleet of vanities to swoop in and attack the Greek city of Athens. Rather than simply attack the city, a red-haired vanity personally made its way to the Italian cultural mission in the city, and personally dismantled it piece by piece before perishing in the middle of the city. While the rest of the Morganas were eventually driven away by the Greek navy, it seemed that this particular vanity accomplished its mission of revenge, as Greece and Turkey immediately closed their remaining Italian cultural missions, setting back Italian diplomatic efforts. Merchant shipping in the Baltic Sea was halted this week by Germany, who claimed that British sea mines were drifting into shipping lanes, posing a hazard to civilian shipping. While this was not well received by affected nations, Germany pointed out that their shipping was not exempt from this ban. The Morgana Mistrust continued to patrol just outside the range of German guns. The Kriegsmarine was once again ordered to ignore her unless she posed an imminent threat. Past this, a heavy concentration of Morganas continued to build up in the North Sea, from the Netherlands to Skagerrak. Upon receiving news of the Polish submarine Orzel's escape, several Kriegsmarine officers were tried and executed by German high command. The United States was dealt a devastating blow this week when the Belle of Constitution was assassinated after a saboteur by the name of Vernon Holland Scholl detonated a bomb on board her as she was being escorted down the Delaware River. Scholl, a veteran of the Great War, was one of the craftsmen who volunteered to assist in her repairs. His sons reported a suicide note they had found in his garage, outlining his belief that Constitution would cause the young men of America, including his own sons, to be drafted into a war on behalf of the Soviet Union. FBI investigation of his home revealed notes suggesting he had been in contact with the Morgana sabotage via radio. No bomb-making supplies were found, nor had anyone seen what could have been a bomb smuggled onto the ship by anyone aboard. President Roosevelt made clear that he held the Morgana sedition solely responsible for this tragedy, dismissing claims of anarchists, undetonated torpedoes, or other conscious sabotage. The entire nation mourned the loss of Constitution, who served in the War of 1812 before spending decades as a museum, eventually finding a second life when her bell awakened. Before her bell quite literally faded before the eyes of onlookers, she was able to ensure the escape of all crew and civilians on board. Her hull is presently resting on the bottom of the Delaware River, masts still above water and flying the American flag. The nation vowed for vengeance against the Morganas that had committed this act of violence. This was not the only news from the U.S., as the Pacific Fleet was safely escorted back to the Philippines after exhausting its ammunition supplies to destroy a Morgana fleet near Formosa. While some called this humiliating, most naval personnel were simply relieved to be back where they could recuperate from the battle. Britain dispatched the 4th Cruiser Fleet to Australia against Morgana attacks, in particular a Despair. The squadron returning to Hong Kong expected to face off against the Morgana Delusion, but instead found only her aircraft in wait. Nearby bases and coastline were subsequently fortified against aerial attack. Delusion herself was spotted just off the coast in the Dia Bay, but vanished into the mist just as quickly. Back in Europe, Morgana concentrations near Skagerrak and the Netherlands kept Germany away from British waters, but also posed a threat to Britain herself. A large group of the aircraft carrier Sinn was spotted heading to Ireland, and a group of Morganas made their way from the Aegean Sea to the Gulf of Sidra. Perhaps the only positive news was the reception of the Polish submarine Orzel, who after a perilous journey promised to thank the German officers who had helped her in person after Hitler was overthrown, Poland liberated, and the war over. Japan may be the only nation who made it through this week unscathed, as the Japanese escort to the Philippines was the talk of the world, having been liberally photographed as Nagato led her fleet on either side of the U.S. battleship row back to safety. To many, this was evidence that Japan had indeed embraced a new era, as the Japanese Navy would be the Emperor's divine protectors in the Pacific. This did not mean Japan was without worry. The Morgana Delusion was spotted in the South China Sea, before vanishing and attacking Portuguese fishing boats. After a light attack on the Chinese city Haikou, her collectors began accumulating a large amount of shattered glass for an unknown purpose. The Japanese army entered the city of Nanning on the 26th, amid reports of innumerable dead and wounded civilians, in large part thanks to the army's indiscriminate aerial attacks. The Soviet Union suffered a large setback in their campaign to free Sakhalin from the Morgana fortifications being constructed there. The Amur River flotilla was dispatched to eradicate a large chain, blocking transit along the coast. Unfortunately, they suffered numerous setbacks, including engine trouble and miscommunication, allowing the Morganas to sink 2 submarines before the entire flotilla was forced to retreat to the safety of the river once more. While the river itself was additionally fortified, the Morganas continued to use Sakhalin for the construction of an unknown facility. Finally, from France, the sloop Bougainville lost contact after being warned of a Morgana fleet by a passing Italian ship. She had earlier reported scattered Morganas spinning in circles or chasing one another off the coast of Africa. Before contact was lost, she transmitted her position to French bases in India for 30 minutes. This led to fears in Paris that Morganas had broken Allied coded transmissions, which led to a reluctance to share intelligence with Britain, especially after their mishap with Germany all but confirmed their intelligence was compromised. A new system would be needed before confidence was restored. Despite this, French officials were still confident that Germany was unable to break their existing codes. That's all for this week. Join us again at WVBN as we bring you the latest news from around the world. From all of us here at the studio, stay safe out there.